particularly keen on being tickled over, guys. So, some mealworms, there we go. Bring you guys up now. There we go.
Noise. Cute noise. Great.
This is quite quiet.
Oh. Too hot for making noises.
Yeah, you usually make quite a bit of racket, don't you guys?
Diggins. Oh, Diggins. Oh, I say. Oh, cracky. Oh. Oh, scrap.
So, in our family of meerkats, we have 13 in total.
Right.
And the female is in charge. Her name is Pippa. And
Can you
I'm trying to work out if it's her or her at the moment. And the rest are all boys.
Right.
So in meerkat society, it's very much girl power.
Right.
And when they have daughters, obviously the female will see her own daughters as a threat. So she'll let them stay with the family for up to 2 years, but then she will encourage them to move on.
Right.
And obviously in a zoo, it's not as easy as it is in the wild.
Right.
They'd simply go off and start their own family in the wild. But in the zoo environment, you have to have 2 enclosures. So you'd have a breeding group and a bachelorette group. And as long as you don't put a male in with the girls, they will coexist quite happily.
Right.
But we've actually really honed all of our females now, and they've gone to other zoos. So this is it for Colchester at the moment. And it's really nice because you've got a stable group and there's no issues. So Pippa's 13 years old, so technically she is an old lady now, but she's still very much in charge and respected by the rest of the group. Now the boys, because the dominant male's no longer with us, sadly he passed away, the boys are arguing over who's going to be the top male.
As they do.
As they do. One of the ways that they do this is by climbing over each other's backs, and literally a little bit of urine comes out, so they scent mark each other, and that's why some of the boys have got quite thin patchy hair on their bums, and that's simply because they're quite a low ranking individual. So anyone who's got a nice thick head of hair is quite, like this one here, is quite high ranking. But they're never really going to win because Pippa, we've put an implant in her so she can't accidentally have any babies with any of her sons. Obviously that wouldn't be very desirable.
No.
And meerkats being meerkats, they do actually breed quite rapidly. You can have 4 litters in a year, and they can have up to 6 each time. So you can go from 2 meerkats to over 20 in the space of a year. So obviously we didn't want any accidents with any of her boys. Plus, she's done her fair share now. She's had quite a few litters over the years, so she deserves a break.
Yeah.
But out in the wild, obviously the reason for their rapid spurt of breeding is because they're quite low down in the food chain, and they've got a lot of predators they need to watch out for, like snakes, birds of prey, jackal, pretty much anything that's bigger than them.
Yep.
So when they have a litter of, say, 4 to 6 pups, they might only have half of them survive.
Right.
So the survival rate is not necessarily that good. And then once they're over that point of being a year old, they're a bit more clued up and there's more chance of survival.
Got one.
So as you can see, they're foraging. They've just had some mealworms and some special insectable biscuits. But their diet is actually quite varied. They do get fruit and veg, different insects like crickets, locusts, waxworms, cockroaches. Pretty much anything creepy crawly these guys will eat. But they also eat meat. So they will get things like red meat and chicken.
Right.
We even give them little rodents like hamsters and gerbils. And they do get like a big rabbit feed once a month as well, which they love. Because out in the wild, they're opportunists. They will attempt to eat absolutely anything, and this will include eggs, lizards, even the odd, if it's a relatively small snake, they'd happily eat that. They eat scorpions. So yeah, literally anything they can get their little mitts on, they will definitely see as something to eat. And they've got a very fast metabolism as well, so they do need to eat little and often.
Right.
And at the zoo they get roughly 6 feeds a day.
Oh wow.
So they get quite a few to get them through the day. They are like us, they do go into the house and they go to sleep at night, but then they're up when the sun's up, and it's the same situation, foraging and finding enough food to get you through. During the colder months, certainly, you know, when we see the change in weather towards the end of the year, they can actually lose up to 5% of their body weight. So that's why the little and often is really, really important.
Right.
Making sure they have enough to keep a nice little sort of fat reserve to keep them warm. So as I was saying on the way down here, when it comes to keeping their temperature regulated, they do rely on their environment around them. So in the house they have got like underfloor heating, and they've got heat lamps and things like that for during the winter months. But certainly on a day like today, you are absolutely fine.
Yeah, aren't they just? They must feel more at home this sort of weather.
Well, people often say that, but because they've never been anywhere but here, like, you know, most of them are born here.
They're acclimatised.
So they're used to UK weather, and you know, we often hear that with a lot of our animals, like even with the elephants, and people say, oh yeah, they must love this weather. Actually, our elephants hate it because they're very British.
Right.
If it's too hot, they're going to moan. If it's too cold, they're going to moan. They're quite content with 25 degrees.
Yeah. You're not going to be inquisitive and jump on my lap, are you? Oh, on my foot.
It's usually once the food starts running out that we become a little bit more interesting.
Oh, hello. Oh. Hello. No?
When they do jump up, one of the reasons we say about trousers is they do have long nails. They're not particularly sharp,
right,
but obviously if they catch you at the wrong sort of angle, they can sort of graze your knees and things. But they certainly don't use them like a weapon. They are literally there as digging tools.
Yes.
So it's like having like massive shovels for hands, and they can easily shift loads of earth and forage.
They dig burrows in the wall, don't they?
They do.
They do.
Our enclosure is actually 1 metre deep, and it's like a concrete bowl.
Right.
So under all the logs in the middle, they have dug their own little sort of system under there. And they're often finding new areas to start digging as well. So we're always sort of trying to sort of fill in some holes where you know they've started digging. Anything that's sort of a trip hazard. So yeah, most of the time they stick to their log area in the middle. So now that the food's starting to run out, we are getting the sentry duty meerkats back on guard. So while eating, normally you'd have one on sentry duty no matter what, but in a captive environment they know that food's there when the keeper's there. And once the food starts to run out, then it's back to going on duty just to keep an eye out for the rest of the family. I would love to know how they decide to do that. I'm honestly not sure.
Who's designated? You're on sentry duty.
I don't know who. It must be Pippa, I presume. Barks out the orders and says, right, it's your turn on sentry.
Right.
And they swap over, but that would be something I would love to know, like how the meerkats communicate to who's going on guard and who's looking out for everyone. Well, they do have different noises that they make. Obviously you hear quite a few little barks and grunts and things like that when it's to do with food. But they also have different ways of communicating, if it's a predator from the sky or whether it's a predator that's sort of low down on the ground.
Oh, what an absolute privilege. It's lovely, isn't it?
In the zoo, if they see sort of birds flying around, they don't take much notice.
Right.
But if it's a helicopter or an aeroplane, literally all of them staring up until it's out of sight. So that obviously looks like a very big, scary bird of prey. And they're not keen on like balloons either. If someone has a balloon and lets it go, they will watch it until it's no longer in sight.
When we were down here earlier, my wife and I were kind of around here, and they all just charged across the enclosure as only a meerkat can, and they all lined up. It was like, what have they seen, or what is drawing their attention to?
Yeah, I think they do recognise their keepers, especially the green.
Right, association?
If they see a keeper, they could think it's potentially someone that's going to surprise them with some mealworms. Yeah.
Look at you, look. That bowl needs food. It smells like food, that bowl. I obviously don't smell of food. I'm feeling very unloved. I am. You can come love me, you know. You can. Come and have a look. I think you should.
Looking closer. Oh, here we go, here we go.
No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for having a sniff.
I think he made a little grunt there as well.
Yeah.
He must have been quite disappointed there was no food on your lap. Someone said something.
All the action's in here.
No, so some don't even go. They're like, oh, the others can check it out. So what I love is when they sort of stand and they use their tail, so they're like almost like a tripod. So it sturdies them when they're sort of looking out. And the dark eyes are basically sunglasses, because they spend a lot of time looking at the sky.
The little bandanas.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And it just helps to reflect the sun because they're constantly looking up. That's my walkie.
Well, if I had mealworms, I'd give them to you. I would.
That's my water bottle. Nothing exciting in there, honest.
This looks good colour. Oh, crikey.
So we've got a few funky names in here as well. We've got Ben, Simon, Ian and Craig. They were named after some of our maintenance team who said, oh no, we never gets called Ian. That made you jump in, didn't it? And we've also got a Pepsi, Monk, Thor. Oh yeah, we've got a few in here. And they're each microchipped.
Oh, they are? Wow.
And we do, I like to call it a bit of a Meerkat MOT. So once a year, unless we have to catch them up for any other reason, we have these massive gauntlet gloves on because considering they're quite a small animal, they have got quite a powerful bite.
Wow.
And so we catch them up, we literally check them all over, trim their nails if they needed. So yeah, it's Meerkat MOT. And I think, when did we do you last? I think it was May. Just checked everyone over, make sure everyone's healthy. But other than that, we're quite hands-off. And we like to let them just be meerkats, really.
Totally. That was brilliant.
They weigh next to nothing, don't they, when they're on you?
That's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, hello. Hello.
So this one in the middle, that's Timon. He's usually the friendliest. I've had him literally sit on people and fall asleep.
Can't call him Timon. He's got to have a mate called Pumbaa.
Well, he is 11 years old.
Is he? Oh.
And he's one of Pippa's first babies ever. Her milk dried up a little bit early, so we did have to sort of assist and syringe feed him.
Right.
And I think that's why he's, you know, not as fearful, or, you know, because a lot of them, when it's sudden movements or noises, they will run.
Right.
But he's a bit more hardy to it. exciting. And this one here is Monk. For a long time he had a big bald patch on the top of his head when he was born.
Name Monk.
And
Oh, no.
the name just stuck.
Poor Monk.
Didn't it?
It did. Oh, cracky. Oh, snaz right underneath that thing. They used to put the tray on the lap out.
When you're outside, I just thought with this heat it might be a bit too much.
Right.
And you might not get as much interaction.
Right.
Because they don't get access to this area, it's nice because I know that they're going to hang about and forage.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife thought we'd be out there, hence she's got the camera. But it's alright, it's cool. Oh, hello. Having a little bit of, find any in there? No?
The good thing about these logs is they can potentially have insects in them and things.
I see.
So they do like a log, don't you? We have our own sort of forest area and we go over and every now and then you get all the rotten logs, so they've got something to
Right.
sort of clamber all over and rip to pieces. They're actually, a lot of animals around the park obviously need forms of enrichment because obviously we're taking away a lot of the instincts of survival, whether it be trying to find food, trying to find water, trying to find somewhere safe to hide down for the night. So because of that, we have to obviously provide different forms of sort of entertainment.
Yeah.
And luckily, because they're in a big group, they tend to entertain themselves quite a bit, and you'll find that if they're sunbathing together or they have like, they do like wrestling with each other and things. But they're very inquisitive, so anything we put in the enclosure that's unusual, they're bound to investigate. So something they do like children's ball pits, and they will just literally dive in and forage around all the coloured balls. We can give them puzzle feeders like bottles hanging, so they have to twist the bottle to get the food out.
Okay.
So yeah, things like that they react really, really well to. And because they're small, obviously you can, enrichment's a lot easier to sort of get hold of, and it's nowhere near as expensive as, say, enriching a rhino.
Right.
Because you guys are quite happy with just a loo roll, aren't you guys? We can hide your food in loo rolls. No, it's not play with Kelly's ankles. What I can do, well, that's it. If you put your knees together, I can put a little bit of food on your lap if you like. And do you want me to get some photos for you?
Okay. Let's switch it up.